coming up on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. Where we talk about wrestling, we talk about stuff. I'm on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. If you haven't subscribed, why not? I'm going to tell you right now, there's a reason you should have. And the reason why is because it doesn't matter. You need to help those out around you. So I'm asking you to assist Larry in his goal to achieve maybe 100,000, 200,000, or maybe just to break a few hundred. That'd be nice. Whatever it takes to get there, we'll get there together. Whether it takes famous names, whether it takes you coming to my comedy shows, whether it takes me building a bridge and letting you cross the bridge, and that way you can push the button on my side of the bridge, and that way you can just say, I subscribe, Larry. That's a lot of work, but eventually we'll get there, unless there's traffic. But I'll still help you subscribe. Is there a point to this? Yes, there is. One thing you'll realize about our show here, folks, is that and I say our show because it's your show as well for tuning in and subscribing on iTunes or Spotify as well. Not just YouTube for you visually impaired. It means you can listen to us audio. So there are options for everyone and anyone to hear our show or see our show or both see and hear our show right here on YouTube. And folks, I can tell you, we're going to take you on a roller coaster ride of, we don't know what direction Larry's going in, but we have to keep up. And if you can't keep up, it's because I'm 2.5 years sober. My brain is clear, even though it seems very cluttered some days, but it's only the caffeine that clears it up. And thus, when I have 2 cups of coffee and I come talk to you on the show, understand I'm way caffeinated now. So if you like caffeine, congratulations, as my friend Nate would tell you. But the thing is, I'm letting you know right now, I do get tongue twisted from time to time because I rush my words and I need everyone to understand. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? An old Chris Tucker line from the movie Rush Hour. So we are going to continue on this path of health, happiness. A new year is upon us, and we're already getting deeper and deeper into the year, folks. That means pretty soon 2022 will be here, and hopefully we won't be wearing masks soon enough. If you've been vaccinated or not, please do the best you can to get through this pandemic. And the only way you're going to do that is to change your outlook and to change your perspective on everything around you. I've noticed since I've gone minus soda, minus alcohol, minus things that process food to the best of my ability, I've seen a new me. I lost 50 pounds in 6 months because my grandmother said I was fat. Now, yes, my grandmother said I was fat when she saw me on FaceTime, but because I don't find that to be insulting, even if it is my grandma saying, well, who's that? My mom says in Arabic, it's Larry. And then basically my grandmother says, he's fat. So I'm going to spare you the Arabic because hada minu, hada Larry. It's seriously, it was very disturbing to me that my grandmother thought I was fat because I was always skinny and I would like eat. I weighed in high school for my wrestling team, 85 pounds my sophomore year, junior year, 93. So what does that mean? You're damn skinny. It means you eat anything you want and it goes in the mouth and out the you know where. So basically, I never gained weight. So why did I gain weight all of a sudden? Because I got pregnant and I saw a belly and I was like, whoa, what is that? The alien invested in me like the Sigourney Weaver was dealing with it. But instead of Sigourney Weaver, it was me and my pregnant belly. And I said, who are you? And what have you done with Larry's stomach? And his gobble chin. So anyone out there suffering from weight issues, organic protein, amazing green superfoods, I was driving Uber and Lyft. Like when the Iron Sheik got inducted to the Hall of Fame, he gets that steering wheel. He goes, I was driving the truck. Yeah, we went to Minnesota. I went to here. I went to there. And now I made it to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. That's the type of stuff you get here, folks. We talk about the world of professional wrestling. The Iron Sheik put you in a camouflage. Ha. And I was a wrestling manager for an independent wrestling show. And at the wrestling show, at the independent wrestling show I worked at, I even took a guitar shot from Jeff Jarrett that left me with tinnitus in the ear. And I believe it because right after I went to the doctor, they said you had a dramatic thing happen to your head. So wrestling is not the F word. Get the F out. And we're not talking about the World Wrestling Federation. We're talking about the word fake. It is not fake. Yes, it is scripted. Yes, we're aware of the fact that we know the winners and the losers, and it is a scripted show. But the physicality, folks, the wrestling aspect of the show is real. The WWE Network now caters to movies, cinematics, because the current product is way over the top, way over the, like even bigger than the arm wrestling movie. But we're not talking about that movie today. We'll save that for another podcast. Today we're talking about American history, like D-Generation X, okay, an Ed Norton movie. So we're going to focus on that today. And our main subject this afternoon, evening, or whatever time it is where you're at. Good morning, top of the morning to you, even though it's afternoon. We are going to be talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, I've done one on Stone Cold in the past, an episode where I spoke a little bit about him and his significant impact to our industry. But this past week, I was in Michigan, Dearborn to be exact, for a drive-in special screening that I found online. And I made my way over there, and I found my way to Michigan, home of the Rusty Cars, and I was able to watch the movie first before it debuted on A&E Channel. It's an 8-part series on A&E depicting the legends of the World Wrestling Federation: Bret the Hitman Hart, Macho Man Randy Savage. Okay, the list will be going on and on and on because I'm going to bring you reviews just like the Stone Cold Steve Austin review today on this wonderful, made me cry. Honestly, it did. It made me think about my life and my career aspirations and the sacrifices I've made to get them and the stupid mistakes I've made to screw them up. Because as an alcohol connoisseur at one point, I definitely had a lot of problems, a lot of drinking issues. And the reason why I had those issues, folks, is because I would not contain the beast. I would not contain the beast. The beast was who? It was the man inside that was yearning for attention. It was the boy inside asking, hey, where was my dad? All those things were factors of why I drank. And my dad was kind of a little bit of a racist, and he wasn't the nicest guy in the world to everybody, but I've learned to be the opposite, to love everyone equally. And this doesn't matter. And I'm not talking about the mitten, which Michiganders taught me that this means their state. You're in the mitten. I look at it as my hand. A very small hand, but not as big as the others. But you know what? The biggest heart in the world speaks to you day after day, week after week, year after year. And I'm watching my levels, bird, on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff, where we talk about wrestling and we talk about stuff. I'm on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. So I wanted to be clear about that, folks, because we have many options for you to listen or watch the show. And we're not charging you. And you're welcome. And I do have a history lesson for you, folks, that no matter what date in the history of our lives, we can find a way to reflect on it and realize our present day is the most important. And the future is ahead of us. And one thing I can tell you, folks, I even posted a quote. Let's tell you a little bit after this quote. I'll save the quote for the end. I want to introduce this movie to you, just in case you've never watched it. It's well worthy of your viewership. I'm going to do a little reviewing for you right now. A release date was October 30th of 1998, when you're basically living a life marked by violence and racism. A neo-Nazi, Derek Vineyard, played by Edward Norton, finally goes to prison after killing 2 black youths who tried to steal his car. Upon his release, Derek vows to change his ways, and he hopes to prevent his young brother, who's played by Danny, or the name is Danny, and his real name is Edward Furlong, who you might know from the Terminator 2 Judgment Day. He was Sarah Connor's son in that movie. And he's trying to help him as his brother is extremely idolized by also Danny. Following his release from prison, his brother tries to emulate his footsteps, but he struggles with his own deeply ingrained prejudices and watches their mother grow sicker as she's ill within this household, where they even have a sister who he even gets into violent acts with. And Derek wonders if his family can overcome a lifetime of hate. Now, this is just a summary. You have to watch this movie with Ed Norton. I mean, you won't even recognize him. He gets jacked for this movie. This same Ed Norton from Fight Club. So I basically can tell you, Ed Norton in Fight Club and Ed Norton in this great movie are must sees, because we're going to review Fight Club a different day. This is focused on American History X, where you have a Black African teacher, principal, that guidance counselor, I guess you could say, helping those around a high school, because Ed Norton went to that same high school, but now he's an adult. And to prevent an act from happening, which is called a carjacking, he has an arm in his home. You have the right to bear arms, folks, and he used it to prevent harm, I guess you could say, to his family and the fact that they were carjacking a car. And it was because of a situation that may have occurred on a basketball court. But either way, you have to watch this movie to see it unfold and see how a neo-Nazi man in prison, because in the prison system, in the jail system, which I went to jail for misbehaving, you learn you need to keep your mouth shut. You learn to keep either the woods and the blacks, and all of it's all separate, folks. All this stuff is real talk for those that have been to jail. And for those that haven't, stayed out of jail. It's not worth drinking and driving. It's not worth doing stupid acts of stupidity while, in any way sober or sane, or insane in the membrane. But then you can claim you're insane. So there's a lot of ways to avoid being incarcerated. It's called just stay in your lane. Don't be violent. Don't start a fight. Turn the other cheek. And once again, realize life is too short. And if you really pursue a robber or a crime, you can be like my grandfather, murdered and stabbed at his liquor store. That one sad Halloween night for me, and I'll never forget it. But my grandfather is still with me. My grandmother, his wife, still on earth with dementia. But both of them took the time to influence me. As my grandmother said, "You're fat." So that same grandma influences me and cares for me. And no matter if she sees a plate of food that reminds her of me, she was a mentor to me. And so we learn from everywhere. And I learned my dad also wasn't the nicest guy in the world, Middle Eastern Iraqi guy. But you know what? I learned he also taught me a lot of life lessons. It's never too late to learn. And we even made peace right before his passing, so I thought. But it took me a long time to finally say, "Dad, we're all good. And now we're at peace." And I'll never forget him. He'll always be with me. He's here on this journey on Larry's New Wrestling Podcast and stuff. I don't like getting too deep sometimes, folks, but you have to understand, Larry is a jack of all trades, and I really want you to be a part of this, folks, this journey that we're going on, where WWE wrestlers do stand-up comedy, where we take you on a journey of life on this podcast, where we take you on an attitude of gratitude. And as I learned so much from my business partner, that it's never too late to change. And as Michael Jackson said, look at the man in the mirror and make that change. And I'll tell you right now, one thing, Michael Jackson, he's innocent. And long after he's gone, we still have movies like American History X and his music, Michael Jackson's I'm referencing, to teach us things, to give us life lessons. And now also, during this movie, as Ed Norton transitions into a new person, we are always willing maybe to listen to something. Now, this quote hit me really hard at the end of the movie. So I posted it on my Facebook, and I took screenshots of the movie as it was transitioning into the credits. And I'm going to read this poem because I did read a poem at my dad's funeral. And so I felt like in this movie, this really hit me about life. And we never know when it's too late, when gunfire or a car accident or just, old age, and we've done our purpose. and basically it's time to go. We never know when it's our turn, folks. So I give you this quote to give you a little inspiration, to uplift you, even though it sounds like I'm depressing. But trust me, folks, I eventually get to the positive stuff, because this show's about uplifting your spirits. But if you look at my face, it might make you sad. So if you're listening on iTunes and Spotify, you're welcome. Here we go. American History X quote. Okay, here we go. This is the actual reading. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will swell when again touched, as surely they will be by the better angel of our nature. Now, for those of you that don't understand poetry, that can sound very confusing. I'll break it down. What I'm seeing is this, that we're not enemies, but we're friends. You know, my favorite quote I've heard, we can still be friends. We must not be enemies. Once again, we can still be friends. Though passion may have strained, you know, I'm guessing that maybe sometimes you're really passionate about something, you love somebody, and let's say you get in a fight. It's strained at that moment. Whether it's your brother, your business partner, or anybody, in the end, it must not break our bonds of affection. No matter what the riff is, let's just make peace, no matter who it is. And I have a lot of people in my life that I've had issues with, and I apologize for my drunken behavior. But does that mean they forgive me? Well, I did my part. And if they didn't, wish them well. Don't wish them ill, whether it's an ex-girlfriend, ex-wife. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. Just make it work. My mother even forgave my dad, she told me. I mean, it's very interesting to know that we all go through different things. We have to learn to accept forgiveness in our heart. That's why that bumper sticker, coexist, is a lovely statement. Because if you think about it, Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, doesn't matter what denomination, really, religion, creed, color, we should still be friends. And how about this part to end it? The mystic chords of memory. Maybe, you know, just something in the past that made you think. And it's like a music, you know, a musical tone. Will swell. I'm just guessing now. When will swell when again touched. So I'm guessing like when you hit those chords, you hit those notes, something will be triggered, and as surely they will be by the better angel of our nature. So maybe something will inside wake us up, and it'll basically say to us, why don't you just be good and don't hate, and don't be, you know, wearing that symbol, and don't look at that person across from you as a color person, because he made friends with the African American in jail. That was a huge influence of keeping him safe towards the end. And he says to him, thank you, that he won't forget it. And after that, he goes out into the world again with a new outlook and a new perspective on people. And everything he was all about, he changed. So maybe a life lesson was finally learned here, as we don't necessarily always learn from our past mistakes as we live in this current world. I know there's still a lot of that hate with people with badges or no badges. It's hate is hate, no matter what, to each other of the same color and to the opposite. So this movie taught me once again, no matter what, I'm Iraqi, Turkish, Armenian, and very confused, but technically I'm white. When you see me on the street, it's like, you know, even Arabic people go, you're Arab? I go, yeah. Look at the nose from the angle. But then I could have been cast on The Sopranos, even though we spoke about that show already. I would have loved to have been on that show. Got yourself a gun. You know, a priest said I was behaving in a way that reminded him of Joe Pesci. And I didn't understand that statement because I hadn't really punched anyone in the face. Go figure it. Forgive me, Father, I have sinned. What have you done? Everything. Okay, that's what you should pretty much say when you go to confession, even if you didn't do it. Just say it so that way you can get off the list for forgiveness, just in case you do it. I'm just saying. I'm sorry, folks. This is what happens on our show. And this is why you're going to get the finale now, which is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Talk about vulgar and talk about violent, but he was cheered and revered. And during my interviews, which I did on this previous episode, you can tune in and check it out. I interviewed people at the movie theater. And at this movie theater, I got a very interesting perspective of Stone Cold from the individuals that I interviewed. Whether they knew him or not, it felt somewhat like they're realizing who the current Stone Cold Steve Austin is, who is an entrepreneur and a businessman, who's given us a real inside look at his life post wrestling. So I think the generation of today is appreciating that Stone Cold, and that's what I kind of gathered from the interviews. Versus I, who knew the beer guzzling, middle finger pointing, and that's the bottom line because he said so perspective. And I wasn't even too big of a fan of his Austin 316 because I'm John 316 and I'm Catholic. But he even said the priest in the movie, or you could call it a movie, or you can call it the TV series, the 8-part series on A&E. I saw it at a drive-in theater. But regardless, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Williams, because that's his real name, his biological name. I mean, if you want to research it, you can go ahead and look online. I'll give you his full name right now. I'll put it on this one website, whose is in our sponsor. So I won't give him any name credit because why should I? It doesn't matter. Okay. I mean, has he legally changed it? Because he was born December 18, 1964. At 64, he was born as Stephen James Anderson, eventually became Stephen James Williams. I guess they didn't go into too many details about that in the movie because I don't remember them explaining why he went from Anderson to Williams. Basically, what happened was he ends up pursuing career of professional wrestling. He always was an athlete, per se. He went to Edna, great student, straight A student in high school, good looking guy. He played football for Edna, Texas. Edna was a small town in Texas. And he would go to the Dallas Sportatorium eventually after football because college football to him wasn't the same as high school. Of course, it's a tougher element, but it was the schooling aspect he wasn't into anymore. He was just done with school. So he did a little forklift driving and he said he could, do that with his eyes closed. So I break things. So I would rather keep my eyes open. I'd rather just not touch a forklift. How about we just say that we're going to save everyone at Costco the trouble that I'm not going to hit them with a forklift if I ever worked there. But you know what? I'm not applying, just so you know. Anyways, but the whole point is this. Focus on this, folks. The most important thing is that we realize every day that no matter what pursuit we want, we can go after it at any point in time in our lives. So I finished college. I dropped out and went back to college. I have a degree in broadcasting from San Francisco State University. Go Gators, community school. I want my money back. Anyways, I had student loans, so half of it was paid by the government anyways, because I was financially challenged. I felt like a child there. Anyways, I dropped out and went back to school and wrapped it up. But Steve Austin said, you know what? I'm going to go and find out what's going on at Chris Adams' school. When he saw an advertisement for gentleman Chris Adams, a British wrestler who became his trainer. And excuse me, eventually he ended up becoming a basically Dallas, Texas wrestler. And he would wrestle in Memphis in the USWA eventually. He paid his dues. Now, this is the time when The Undertaker also was coming up around the same time frame. And you had wrestlers also intertwined into this documentary. And as I take a beverage and drink it. Anyways, back to focus. So throughout this movie, let me clear my throat. So throughout this movie, Jim Ross The Undertaker are amongst some of the individuals. Bruce Pritchard, WWE creative director right now, all chime in on the development of this character and the fact that he started out and always had that go get. So someone from WCW, Mr. Jim Ross, was there working in the territories in that time frame. And in the early 90s, he had made his jump from WWF, or excuse me, WCW. Jim Ross went to WWF and he was working for them. So they didn't really cross over that much, but he was there when he was stunning Steve Austin. And he also was from Hollywood, California. Yes, a gentleman from Texas was billed from Hollywood, California. Folks, eventually he would work in Hollywood, California because he made a lot of movies on the independent scene. We're going to talk about that later. But he eventually teams up with Flying Brian Pillman to create a great tag team, which I love, called the Hollywood Blondes, where they would do this. They would rotate their hands like a movie reel thing, you know what I mean? Like saying the movie's rolling. And that was their gimmick. But they were great together. And they faced Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. They were like the old school versus the new school tag team, okay? The Horsemen of the 90s versus basically Brian Pillman and Steve Austin at that time. Not Stone Cold yet, Stunning Steve, which I even grabbed his jacket in 1994 when he came down to the ring, and I clinged on to it. And he didn't realize I was holding it. And then as soon as he realized, he whips around and goes, "Get your hands off me, punk." And I took a picture like that. And I was like, "Argh!" And then I took a picture. And basically, because it was my first live wrestling event. And I was like, dude, I'm actually grabbing his jacket. This isn't very smart. But you know what? I didn't care. It doesn't matter. To me, I was going to get kicked out either way. Or, well, they stole my jacket anyways that night. So they got something out of it, those crooks. I know you're out there. Anyways. Back to focus. They couldn't see me doing that on iTunes or YouTube, but I mean iTunes or Spotify. I was pointing at them saying, "I know you're out there." Right now, Steve Austin is actually the age of 56 and looks phenomenal because he's in charge of his Broken Skull sessions on the WWE network, and he found his voice in podcasting. And I can tell you, folks, we actually will speak about that a little bit later because I want to review the movie still and the process that they take us through on how he makes his way over to the World Wrestling Federation after getting fired by WCW. But in ECW, he learns how to create the gimmick that would have been the moneymaker because they didn't really think he was going to be a top guy. That's why they let him go after an injury that happened in a Japanese show. The WCW goes to the Japan Super Show, and he got injured over there. And he was wrestling on a torn, I forget what, something torn in his shoulder, I believe. And anyways, he ends up getting surgery, and he ends up coming back to the WCW. No, FedEx, hey, you're fired, and a phone call from Eric Bischoff, who they eventually worked together in the World Wrestling Federation later on in the early 2000s. And I can tell you, it was an awkward reunion because at a pay-per-view called No Way Out, Eric Bischoff is the one he first greets after he drops the ball and he comes back and all that stuff. So we're jumping all over the place, but this documentary is definitely worthy of. It gives you every aspect of his career. I don't want to break it down for you completely, but I do because the man has had a phenomenal run. And to go from Stunning Steve to Stone Cold was just because his wife said, "Make sure you drink your tea before it's Stone Cold," as he's watching this Iceman about a guy who was a murderer, like a cold murderer. And the Iceman, research it and watch the movie because Stone Cold really was an accident after becoming the ringmaster and managed by the $1 Million Man. Well, what is a ringmaster? He was like basically the master of the ring. I mean, even Steve Austin was like, but then they were gonna give him a different name when they said Iceman, like Chili McFlurry or something like that. Some of you get it at the McDonald's. But anyways, but that didn't happen, thank goodness, because I wouldn't have been the same Chili McFlurry, Steve Austin. I don't know. He just wouldn't have the same ring, right? I can't even say it. Chili McFlurry, Steve Austin. See? But Stone Cold, see? It's just different than the ice cream. because that would be cold stone. Anyways, but he is cold on the inside, icicle in the middle. 2 minutes. We'll review Encino Man in the future. Pauly Shore's movie with Brendan Fraser soon. Okay, cheap pop. I know. But folks, I can tell you, if you've never seen Encino Man, watch it. Show your kids and say Weasel. Anyway, so Steve Austin's career really didn't last as long as he wanted because he technically retired at WrestleMania with Dwayne Johnson. WrestleMania, and I believe, I don't want to say it was WrestleMania, not 18, but yeah, no, 18, it was The Rock and Hogan. So it was the year after, 19. I was closing my eyes to think. WrestleMania 19. I mean, I could just look it up right here. And then he has 4 kids. And honestly, in this movie, he's saddened by the fact that he didn't have a good relationship with his daughters because of the fact that he was on the road. He said he held her, put a bottle in her mouth, gave her her first bottle, and then he had to hit the road in the plane. That was the life of a wrestler. And folks, I can tell you they have a little bit more leniency now that they're not even going and traveling because of COVID. But even before COVID, folks, the schedule was a lot harder back in the day. 300 days a year. Bret the Hitman Hart has spoken about that numerous times because he advocated for the fact that he was never around his family. So that leads for a lot of problems on the road. Divorces are very high for the reason of they're away from their families. And I guess the wife doesn't feel happy anymore, and thus there is a separation. But most of the people in this business accept that role. And Steve Austin even admits to it, that he sacrificed being in that ring for us fans and for the world to enjoy his entertainment, and he sacrificed his own family for that. That says a lot about the passion for the business. The Undertaker even advocates for Steve Austin, that he never claimed to be a ringleader himself, and then same thing with Steve Austin. He just did his thing. He was a kind of a loner backstage. He didn't really, you can see in some of the B-roll footage when he's leaving the ring and he's sweating and he's basically done his job. No one really, everyone just looks at him but doesn't say anything to him. They just kind of give him a space because he's the #1 top guy drawing everyone money, just like Hulk Hogan was in the 80s. Top guy drawing money. So you want to be on that show because that was the way they earned their money. It was the gate. It wasn't these guaranteed contracts, folks, that eventually happened because of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall going to WCW and starting the Monday Night Wars. That was when the guaranteed money came, was when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were given money by Eric Bischoff, Ted Turner's money, to procure them in a competition aspect. Finally, the Monday Night Wars began. Now there's no more competition. So whatever you see from this day forward, don't expect any rivalry between AEW when you had Stone Cold interview Chris Jericho on his podcast. And that's all right here, folks. Coming up, you're going to hear about it. You're going to see it on Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. Whether it's comics that are professional wrestlers or movie stars that are professional wrestlers that want to try stand-up comedy. Folks, we're going to bring it to you. This year, we promise you one thing, a must-see documentary series, an 8-part series about the life and career of Stone Cold Steve Austin, into the developing rivalry with Mr. McMahon and the classic rivalry with The Rock. All of it is covered in this documentary. I cry during this documentary because I appreciate the sacrifice that someone made so that I could smile, I could not flip off my teachers because I didn't do that, but I know kids did. And that was because the Attitude Era was the greatest era. And if you watch the interviews or listen to them, you'll see that on our previous episode that these fans love Stone Cold. And they made their way to that drive-in theater, which was fun, but the app had glitches and I couldn't get the audio sometimes. So I rewatched it again before I did this podcast. So I was up to date on some of the things that I heard, and maybe I missed something due to technical difficulties. But then I watched it again, and I understand why this gentleman who gets in this really beautiful blue truck and drives off into the sunset at the end of this documentary and shows us that he's lived a pretty good life and he wouldn't change a thing. And he also enjoys the fact that he found his voice. And not every wrestler gets the chance to give us this information because they're long gone. So many wrestlers, due to steroids, painkillers, drinking, substance abuse, and whatever the reason why they may have gone too soon, they have made and paid the ultimate sacrifice for us fans to enjoy this genre. Owen Hart fell from the rafters and broke his neck and died in the ring. When they should have ended the pay-per-view right there, they continue the show. Folks, draws, paralyzed. That was also brought up by one of the fans during our interviews. I can tell you, folks, please understand the significance of this documentary series, this docu-series, and also the Treasure series, which is also following it. You should also check that out, where we go to find artifacts that was worn in the ring, and fans, super fans, hold on to them, and they try to negotiate these artifacts back. Really? Is this really a show? Shouldn't you just give Mick Foley back his sock if he wants it? I'm just saying. It stinks anyways. But for that fan, I guess they want to rub their face in, oh, Mr. Socko. Shall we end it, folks? I don't know. On that note, it's been fun. I think we spoke a lot about stuff, and we spoke a lot about the world of professional wrestling. In the upcoming weeks, folks, I'm going to let you know right now, you might see a new set. You might see me doing some guerrilla interviews in different parts of the world, parts unknown, as we call them. And I can tell you right now, my business partner understands wrestling terminology because he understood the word bump, taking bumps. Thank you, Bert, for understanding what that means. That makes me so happy. And folks, for those of you that don't understand that, who don't understand wrestling, a bump means it's like falling in the ring. So you take bumps in the ring, okay? And if you're a mark, you're a super fan because you think you know everything about wrestling, like me. But if you want to get real, get legit and get in the ring of life, and enjoy it. Because it's simple. As I send you off today, I give you a special statement that's near and dear to me as I go through different trials and tribulations, and we all do. We might have family that's sick. We might have friends that are hurt, but we mentally can help them. I said mentally help them. And sometimes we physically have to pick them up, dust them off, or you have to do it yourself like I did after realizing sobriety was the key to success. And for me, I'm going to continue on the path of having an attitude of gratitude, and I'm going to take you on a super journey. If you'd like to join me, subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify as Lightning Strike Studios presents Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for hanging out with Larry Lawrence. The name's so nice, they named him twice. And folks, it's because my Facebook profile page is full. Please don't send me any more friend requests, because realize one thing, we have a Facebook like page, Larry's New Wrestling Podcast on Facebook. We also have bookings for a wrestler by the name of Carl Styles. So if you'd like to book him, he is on a previous episode 41, okay? And you can book Carl Styles through Larry. So contact me directly. If you'd like to book Carl, I'm taking care of his business affairs. Listen to our podcast. He's had a very long career in professional wrestling and is still wrestling till this day. Take a look at what he looks like. He's in ring shape. And if you want to book one of the gentlemen who wrestled on the Dead, woo, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, call me, text me, or email me, okay? And the reason why, LARRYLAWRENCE0925 for bookings of Carl Styles. Okay, folks? If you would like to book Carl Styles, check him out on my show. YouTube is Matches, Carl, first name, Styles, last name, Styles. Not to be confused with the one and only phenomenal one, AJ Styles. I'm talking about Carl. Like, you know, hey, Carl, because he's from the South, he plays the country boy. I was my very bad country boy, by the way. Are we leaving yet? Okay, anyways, we got that done. Carl Styles, email me, LARRYLAWRENCE0925 at yahoo.com. Email me directly if you're interested in booking Carl Styles for your promotion out there around the world. Let's go home, as they say. Take it home, as you know, the go home signal. We're going home. We're going home. We got it. That means wrap up the match. For those of you that don't understand that term either. So we're going home. Our life is whatever we make of it. Folks, do me a favor. No matter what you're going through, realize it. It's simple. It's simple. Our life is whatever we make of it. Just go out there into the world today and simply make it a great one. Thank you all for tuning in to our show, Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff. Take care. Be good to each other. And do not cross the street without looking both ways. Thank you. Take care. Peace. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.